He was loyal, invisible, and forgotten. For years, he drove a wealthy businesswoman through glittering city streets, always on time, always silent. But one winter night, everything changed. After being cast aside without warning, he was left with nothing, forced to fight not just for survival but for dignity. What the world didn't know was that he carried a secret powerful enough to shatter an empire. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't just ruin her reputation. It exposed something far darker about the system itself. Could one man's courage really bring it all crashing down? Charlotte Reynolds was the kind of woman whose name carried weight in every corner of Chicago. At 55, she had built a sprawling real estate empire worth over $150 million, with glossy magazine features painting her as both brilliant and benevolent. On the surface, she was the philanthropist who claimed to fight for equality, the polished figure who never missed a chance to remind the world of her generosity. Cameras loved her diamond brooches and designer gowns, and reporters praised her sharp mind. And then there was Marcus Green. For 4 years, he had been her driver, the man in the background who made sure she arrived everywhere on time. Tall, reserved, and steady, he knew the city's streets better than anyone. His job wasn't glamorous, but it was stable, and with a 9-year-old daughter depending on him, that stability meant everything. To Charlotte, he was invisible. To Marcus, she was just another employee. But behind those quiet rides and polite nods, a storm was brewing. Marcus carried a past that Charlotte never cared to ask about. A degree in business administration, a photographic memory, and a devotion to his daughter that outweighed everything else. It only took one night, one decision for that fragile balance to shatter. And when it did, the very empire Charlotte had spent decades building would begin to crumble, piece by piece. For Marcus Green, the breaking point came on a night colder than most. His daughter, Alina, had suffered a sudden asthma attack, and he spent the long hours in a hospital waiting room, praying she would breathe steadily again. By dawn, exhaustion weighed on him, but he still climbed behind the wheel, determined to get Charlotte Reynolds to her morning meeting on time. He was 20 minutes late. That was all. Charlotte didn't ask why. She didn't care that Marcus had sent messages explaining the emergency or that Alina's medical chart carried the timestamp of 3:05 a.m. Instead, her words cut with the kind of sharpness that leaves scars long after they are spoken. He was dismissed on the spot, told to clear his things, and stripped not just of his job but the small apartment that came with it. For years of service ended in seconds, and he was left with nothing but his daughter's hospital bills and the bitter sting of betrayal. What Charlotte never realized was who Marcus truly was. To her, he had been background, another black man doing a thankless job. But Marcus had a degree in business administration, a photographic memory, and the quiet discipline of someone who had spent years observing from the shadows. He knew her patterns, her shortcuts, and most importantly, her secrets. At first, Marcus considered moving on, finding another job, burying the humiliation deep inside. But as Alina asked why they no longer lived in their apartment, something hardened within him. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about exposing the truth. Weeks later, the perfect stage appeared. A press conference at the Hilton Grand Ballroom in Chicago, where Charlotte was set to polish her image once again. Reporters filled the hall, cameras clicked, and the air buzzed with anticipation. She adjusted her diamond brooch and smiled, ready to deliver another carefully rehearsed speech about fairness and equality. But one question changed everything. A reporter's voice cut through the noise. "Ms. Reynolds, is it true you fired your driver, Marcus Green, during last month's snowstorm, forcing him to sleep in his car?" The room froze. Charlotte's smile faltered, and in the third row, Marcus himself rose to his feet. In his hands was a black briefcase that seemed ordinary until he opened it. Inside were documents, recordings, and proof that could dismantle her empire piece by piece. The story Charlotte tried to bury was about to erupt into the open, and there was no way to stop it. The air inside the ballroom shifted from polished confidence to raw unease. Charlotte Reynolds tried to steady her voice, insisting Marcus had been dismissed for multiple violations. But as she spoke, Marcus reached into his briefcase and pressed play. Her voice, sharp, cold, undeniable, filled the room. "I don't care if your child is in the hospital. People like you always have excuses. Either do your job or go back to where you came from." Gasps rippled through the audience. Reporters bent over their laptops, typing furiously, their eyes darting between Charlotte and Marcus. Investors shifted uncomfortably, whispering to one another. Charlotte's diamond brooch glittered under the lights, but her polished mask was cracking. Marcus wasn't done. With calm precision, he revealed medical records confirming his daughter's emergency admission that night. Then came the text messages he had sent. Please for just 20 extra minutes. One by one, he laid out evidence of her exploitation. The grueling shifts, the racist remarks, the unlawful evictions of low-income families. Each revelation landed like a hammer strike, louder and heavier than the last. Charlotte's denials sounded weaker, more desperate. "That's out of context. Those are lies," she insisted, but the room no longer believed her. And then came the blow that shattered everything. Marcus revealed documents tracing millions to undeclared offshore accounts in Bermuda. Silence fell so thick it felt suffocating. Reporters' cameras flashed relentlessly. Investors began leaving, their faces pale. Charlotte leaned toward him, whispering, "What do you want? Money? I can transfer it today." But Marcus didn't flinch. His eyes were steady, his voice cutting through the chaos. This was never about money. At that moment, the doors of the ballroom swung open. Federal agents stepped inside, warrants in hand. Charlotte's empire was collapsing in real time, and the world was watching. 6 months later, the echoes of that press conference still lingered. Charlotte Reynolds, once celebrated as a visionary mogul, now sat behind prison walls, convicted of tax evasion, fraud, and systemic discrimination. Her empire, built on exploitation and silence, had crumbled in plain sight. The diamond brooches, the magazine covers, the carefully crafted image of equality, all gone. And Marcus Green? He no longer stood in the shadows. From a modest office on the 22nd floor of a Manhattan tower, he led the Justice Alliance Foundation, an organization dedicated to protecting workers who had been silenced and discarded, just as he once had been. Families found support, whistleblowers found protection, and for the first time, Marcus's daughter, Alina, saw her father not as a driver, but as a man who had changed lives. But beyond the triumph of one man lay a deeper truth. Marcus hadn't simply exposed Charlotte. He had pulled back the curtain on a system that allowed her to thrive for so long. A system where power and wealth too often overshadow humanity. Where race, class, and privilege decide who gets heard and who gets ignored. In the end, Marcus's greatest victory wasn't Charlotte's downfall. It was the reminder that justice, though slow and painful, is possible when truth refuses to stay buried. So, the question remains, how many more Marcus Greens are out there, loyal, overlooked, silenced, waiting for the moment to be seen? And how many Charlottes continue to rise, unchecked, on the backs of those they exploit? The world saw the truth that day. The question is, will we choose to remember it, or let history repeat itself? Marcus's journey showed us how truth can topple even the most powerful, and how resilience can turn injustice into change. But what do you think? Was Charlotte's downfall true justice, or just the beginning of a larger fight? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.